The house had never been silent before. Even in its quietest hours, there was always the gentle hum of life. A lullaby hummed under her mother's breath, the faint rustling of fabric as she moved through the halls. But now, silence filled every corner like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. It suffocated Emily Crawford as she sat on the edge of the narrow bed that had once been a refuge. She clutched a thin blanket tightly around her, as if its frayed edges could hold her together when everything else was falling apart. The faint scent of her mother's perfume still lingered in the room, though it was beginning to fade, just as her mother's voice had faded in those final days when sickness had stolen her breath. Emily had watched helplessly as the strongest woman she had ever known withered before her eyes. Her mother's hands, once so warm and steady, had turned cold. Her eyes, once full of light, had dimmed. And when her mother's fever had taken everything, Emily was left behind, alone, and at the mercy of a man who had never wanted her. Douglas Crawford had never struck Emily. He'd never raised his voice. His cruelty wasn't loud. It was in the absence of recognition, in the way he looked through her rather than at her, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience he was forced to endure. When her mother was alive, Emily had convinced herself that she could endure his indifference. He wasn't kind, but he wasn't a monster. He kept them fed, clothed, under a roof. Surely that counted for something. But now the truth stood clear before her. Douglas hadn't done any of it for them. He had done it for appearance's sake, for the illusion of respectability of a generous husband. Now that the woman who had tethered him to that illusion was gone, he no longer needed to pretend. The day after the funeral, the house changed. Her mother's things vanished. Dresses, shoes, keepsakes gone without a word. The photographs that had once adorned the hallway walls were removed. It was as if Margaret Crawford had never existed. Douglas's efficiency in erasing her was chilling. Emily had tried to fight it. She had argued, pleaded, begged to keep at least something. But his cold stare had frozen her blood. "This is my house," he had said. "You will live by my rules. If you don't like them, you're free to leave." It was a cruel joke. He knew she had nowhere to go. Days passed in silence. She was fed only when she asked, and even then, the portions were meager. Her room, once warm, became barren. Her school books disappeared. There was no need for them, he said. She would no longer continue her education. She wandered the house during the day, careful to avoid him. She had never been encouraged to speak much in his presence, but now even her footsteps felt like an intrusion. Something heavy and unspoken hung in the air, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Then, one evening, the waiting ended. He called her downstairs. He spoke her name with no familiarity, no warmth. Emily hesitated, then obeyed. Douglas sat in his armchair, but he wasn't alone. A man, older and impeccably dressed, sat across from him. His face was weathered, his expression unreadable, but his gaze was sharp as he studied her. "So this is the girl," the stranger said. Not his stepdaughter. Not Emily. Just the girl. Her stomach nodded. She turned to Douglas, but his face was empty of anything human. "I've made arrangements for you," he said flatly. She didn't understand. Arrangements? You'll be leaving tomorrow. Leaving? She hadn't asked to leave. She had nothing beyond this house. But here, at least, her mother's memory still lived. "I don't understand," she whispered. The stranger rose, brushing non-existent dust from his sleeve. "You don't have to." Something inside her broke. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in weeks, Douglas smiled. It wasn't kind. "You don't have a choice." She turned toward the door, the hallway beyond it, the stairs that led to her room. But where would she go? The man shook his head as if reading her mind. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, girl. Tomorrow." That night, she lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling. Morning came too soon. Douglas didn't say goodbye. He didn't even watch as she was led to the waiting car. Emily didn't look back. The ride to nowhere. The man who now owned her was silent during the ride. His name was Victor Alden. She learned this not because he told her, but because the driver addressed him once. He spoke only to give instructions, emotionless commands that felt colder than the winter air leaking through the car. "You will not speak unless spoken to," he said. You will do as you're told. You belong to me now. Emily wanted to scream. She wanted to claw at the door and throw herself onto the gravel road. But she did none of these things. She kept her eyes on the passing trees and pressed her nails into her palms hard enough to break the skin. The estate loomed out of the mist like something from a half-forgotten nightmare. Massive, gray, and indifferent. The new prison. Victor's house was not what Emily had expected. It was grand, too grand, and yet lifeless. Servants opened the door for her. She stepped inside, expecting to be ushered into some dark, locked room. Instead, Victor spoke calmly. You will have your own quarters. You're free to leave this house if you wish. I bought you because I knew what your fate would have been otherwise. I'm not kind, but neither am I a monster. She didn't sleep that night. Freedom that didn't feel like freedom. Days passed. She was left alone in a room larger than her entire childhood home. Clothes appeared in the wardrobe. Fine fabrics, soft blouses. Meals arrived at regular hours. No one told her what to do. Victor rarely appeared, and when he did, his words were measured, distant. One morning, he handed her an envelope. Inside are papers. A house. Money. A chance. She stared at him in disbelief. What? You deserve better. And just like that, she was free to leave. Learning to live. The house he had given her was small compared to the estate, but vast by her standards. She stood inside it for hours, unsure of what to do. For the first time, no one was watching her. No one was waiting for her to fail. She explored the city, timid at first. She found a bookstore and bought her first books. She wandered the university and dreamed of an education. And then she acted. She enrolled in classes. She studied harder than anyone. She built a life, slowly, carefully. She began a small consulting business that grew faster than she could have imagined. The past returns. One evening, years later, there was a knock on the door. It was Douglas. Older, smaller, but his eyes were the same. You've done well for yourself, he said. You owe me. No, Emily said. I owe you nothing. She closed the door in his face. But he returned days later with a woman at his side. They demanded money, claimed she wouldn't be where she was without him. You sold me, Emily said, and I saved myself. I built this. You have no claim on me. And she closed the door. This time, for good. Her own future. Emily never saw Douglas again. Her life continued, full of friends, respect, and work she loved. She no longer feared footsteps behind her. She no longer braced for someone to take it all away. Standing at her office window one night, watching the lights of the city below, she realized something simple and profound. She was happy, not because of anyone else, not because someone had given her a life, because she had built it herself. If you found Emily's story powerful, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you next time.